how can we become better storytellers? I think that's actually quite an important skill for us, because for one reason, the Bible is full of stories. And so if we're going to be preaching or teaching the Bible, we're not going to go too far before we're dealing with either history, which is story, it's told as story, or a parable, a story that is told. And so to be able to communicate those sections of Scripture well, we really need to develop, I think, the area of storytelling. Now, how do stories work? In a nutshell, really simply, stories are about characters in a plot. And so there's characters, and the text will tell us about those characters, and those characters are in a situation where there's a conflict, there's a disequilibrium, something's not right. And so you look at the story and you go, okay, something's not right here. This Zacchaeus is wanting to see Jesus. He's a tax collector. Jesus isn't. There's a tension there. And then the plot develops, and we discover that actually Zacchaeus is short, and he can't see over the crowd. He's not going to push through the crowd. That would be dangerous. So he runs, he climbs a tree, things that a Middle Eastern man would never do. But it's all building the tension. And all the way from the start, once you're told Zacchaeus was wanting to see Jesus, you want to know what happens. What's going to happen? Is Jesus going to tell him off? Is Jesus going to put him in his place? What's going to happen? Is there any way that these two can come together? And just in the space of a few verses, Luke tells us the story of Zacchaeus, and it turns out that Jesus actually finds him, calls him down from the tree, rescues him really from a crowd that's gathered that wants to at least give him a good talking to and probably get quite violent with him because he's trapped. He's in a difficult situation. His bodyguards can't get close, but Jesus rescues him. And then you go through that and you see Zacchaeus' response, and then verse 10 turns the whole thing on its head. The whole way through you've been thinking this is about Zacchaeus seeing Jesus. It turns out Jesus was seeking him. And so that's just 10 verses. That's not a 450-page novel like you might buy in the airport. That's just 10 verses, and it's really tight communication. Every detail counts. Every detail is pregnant with meaning. And so I think one of the ways that we need to develop as communicators, or one of the ways we can develop, is to say, okay, I need to understand how the stories work. Once I understand that there's a tension or a conflict, and then I'm looking for how it gets resolved, that's going to help me make sense of the story. But then in terms of how I communicate it to others, I think when you're starting with material that's so succinct and so tight, as a preacher or as a teacher, you need to develop the skill of describing. Because if you simply rattle it off, kind of like I have here, it's just line drawings at best in your imagination. But if you can describe Jericho and what the tree would have been like, and what it means for a Middle Eastern man to run, and all of those details in the story, if you take the time to develop the description, people start to see not just truths floating by or line drawings within, they start to see the movie, they start to see the action. And the moment they start to see it, then they start to have the same response that stories are intended to evoke, the concern, the wonder, the attraction, or the being repulsed by someone, and all of those things start to happen. So even without explaining, here's the point of the story, people have experienced the story. And for me, that's the big thing, is if we want to be good storytellers, if we want to communicate Bible stories, we need to recreate the effect that those stories have. If we can get people to imagine, to experience, and to feel the effect, they're already quite a way down the road to understanding it. And then, of course, we can make the point and clarify the theology and so on. That's certainly important. But if we just go straight to that without telling the story well, we're missing an incredible opportunity.